Yeah, it intrigued me. I'm glad when I reached out, you were very open to having me on. And, I love seeing this kind of stuff where you have podcasts, you have people starting to write articles and websites. Every single piece of media that kind of helps build a community, I'm always 1,000% for.
I know, because I've always wanted. I When I started, my main focus was to basically give it an open platform to the community if they want to come on and basically say their grievances or just want to have a conversation about certain fighting games or what they want from the FGC. Just basically give them an open platform and a forum to do so. Like I tell most of my guests, I don't edit anything you say. So
Well, I think after this, you might get some people reaching out. Maybe they want to do the same. Um, that's what I'm hoping because I think everyone should focus on building up each other in this
yeah.
way. If you're giving someone a platform, they should absolutely take the opportunity that's given to them. So excited. But yeah, I saw you had some things you wanted to kind of ask me about, maybe pick my brain on. As a lot of people have seen, whether on Twitter or other social media places, I'm a very open book. So, anything anyone ever even wants to reach out to privately, I'm all hands on deck. You won't see me tiptoeing around. I'm here to educate and mainly to just make everyone better, whether it's the know-how with branding, how the FGC works, how esports works, all of the above.
Okay, I got you. So I guess we can go ahead and just jump straight on into it. I know you
Yeah,
and
hit me.
I know you and Gutex had a little back and forth about about City of Wolves and the EWC and everything, and the Saudis coming in with their money backing a lot of stuff, and now Capcom's partnering with them for the next 3 years. And I guess y'all didn't really see eye to eye on it.
Yeah, so I think when it comes to the FGC, a lot of players, a lot of tournament organizers, there's this little thing going on where people don't realize when there's money coming in from somewhere, you can't really speak poorly because, like, let's say you gave me $20. I was in need, right?
Hmm.
If a month later, if you hear about me saying, hey, this person is a terrible guy, don't even talk to them, except then all of a sudden, if there's ever a time, not just for me, but anyone around me wants to approach you when they're on bad times and say, hey man, like, do you have $5 I could use? Chances are you're going to say no, right? And
Yeah.
so when it comes to Saudi Arabia, a lot of people think along the lines of, hey, we don't like them, therefore we don't need your money, we don't want your money. But what they don't realize is people outside of that sphere that might want to do something, they'll see that, and all of a sudden they'll have a negative view, right? They're going to say, well, if they dig something up on us that they don't like, then we're going to lose our investment. We're going to lose everything we're putting in. Maybe we shouldn't move forward with that. And so, with the EWC and Capcom, everything around Saudi Arabia, I'm not saying it should be openly celebrated, but what I am saying is you got to minimize the negativity because let's say the FGC can use the Saudi money for let's say 3, 4, 5 years, and then it's built to an extent where they could say, hey, we don't really want to work with you guys anymore. We're going to fish for something else, someone else. At least at that point, there's not a negative stigma. So that transition could be easier. And also, as we've seen throughout the history of just entertainment in general, which gaming falls under, when you look at the history of it, you really see that there's only X amount of companies, X amount of wealthy individuals that are willing to take a chance with anything within entertainment. And so I don't think it's healthy to create this negative impact because you're already dealing with a very small section of people that would even listen to a pitch.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, so, but again, I don't blame those that say, hey, we don't agree with the culture around Saudi Arabia, or hey, I wish that FGC or just esports in general had more options, right?
Yeah.
But I don't see those conversations being public. You know, all I'm seeing are people saying along the lines of down with Saudi Arabia, how dare you pursue Saudi Arabia? And that's just not good when you're looking for the longevity and the actual emergence of, you know, making the FGC something greater than it's been in probably the past few decades.
Yeah. 'Cause I know a lot of people have basically been putting out there that they're if the Saudis come in and basically put more money into the scene, that it might force them into retirement because they need to stand on their principles. And I'm at the point where I'm just like, well, I think everybody's got to make their own choice on this situation. Because me personally, I'm not gonna tell someone not to go get money if they can make it. Just because if I feel a certain type of way, which I don't really have a opinion one way or the other. I feel like if they're coming in, they're willing to put a lots of money behind the scene. Like that's a good thing. It's gonna help the scene grow. It's gonna bring it more to the main stage so more people can get involved with it. Yeah, what's going on, guys?
Yeah, and it's not just
Gonna be
that,
playing some Marvel
but it's
Rivals waiting on Mr.
also
Joshua to get
about the
here,
fact that
and then we're gonna go ahead
let's
and kick it off.
say
And
there's a
finally, I can
million
play ranked because I
people
finally got
that
level 10.
would watch Evo.
I think Joshua.
Well, if 10% of them say, hey, we're not going to support the Saudi Arabia thing, then that's the first year. Maybe the next year it's 15, maybe next year 20. So all of a sudden, you're also, for potential investors that might want to come in instead, you're seeing lower numbers. So that means even less money, maybe even a more bigger chunk of a percentage of the back end will have to be supplemented because, oh, well, compared to 3 years ago, everything's down by 20%. That's a much higher risk. So, to alleviate that, we're going to want more of this, more of that. So
Yeah,
yeah, again, I totally respect those that don't want to be involved, but to kind of try to make this pile on of
yeah,
don't even support this, don't even watch it, don't even anything. It's really bad, and it over time it'll show a really big impact, and I don't think anyone would be ready for that because things are already as bad as they are and have been. You see majors struggling, you see locals having issues. Some regionals are doing a little better. I think that's mostly down to the fact that you see them partnering up with entities like Comic Con in some states,
Yeah.
which lowers the cost for everyone, brings more people in. So
Yeah, because I
yeah,
know,
but
because I know we have a tournament, DreamHack, that partners with like I forgot, it's a technology show, but they're partnered with them to bring a gaming tournament.
exactly, and honestly, I'd rather see that happening more so throughout the FGC because a lot of the reason that FGC majority of people just don't like me, disagree with me is because I was very vocal about things for Evo, which is considered the top, streaming, the top gets the most entrants, etc. I was very vocal about how they're they're not where they should be if they're making as much money on a back end and quote unquote, hey, we're barely breaking even. Hey, we're this. Hey, we're that. So I think if the FGC wants to build correctly, they have to not follow what Evo's doing. They have to find another path forward that makes more sense because if Evo, quote unquote, is struggling, which I don't think they are, but again, this is just face value. If they're saying they're struggling, I'll just keep them to their word that they are. That'll be considered the golden standard, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think Evo 2024 Vegas had over 5,000 entrants. So what happens when a CEO or a Frosty or Combo Breaker, what happens if they can get 5,000 entrants? Well, if Evo's struggling, they're going to struggle just as much because they're not pivoting away from what Evo is doing, which again, I think is wrong if what they're saying publicly is along the lines of, again, like, hey, we barely break even. We're barely able to pay the quote unquote volunteers, which some people have said for Evo or helping running brackets, they got $50 and like a food voucher. Like my heart breaks, dude, when I hear that these people that are volunteering their time and all that, and they think like, oh well, it's not a volunteer type thing because we're getting paid $50 for 3 days worth of work. It's like, whoa, like to yourselves. That's not how it should be.
No,
Um,
it definitely shouldn't be like that. Because I
yeah.
honestly thought the Evo bracket runners made, I would say probably like I would think it made like 150 a day. I think that would be a reasonable price depending on what all they're doing.
Oh yeah, exactly. I'm sure it fluctuates. I'm just going based off of
Yeah.
those that were publicly vocal when I brought up things. Because what I said was along the lines of, hey, this doesn't make sense. And it seems like Evo has a lot of volunteers. So people corrected me by saying, oh, I wasn't a volunteer because I made $50. It's like, well, that's not a lot for probably the work that you put in either. And then you see the low prize pools, so it gives you a lot of questions and no one's willing to give the answers that are needed. And I think due to contracts, behind the scenes, non disclosures, I think a lot of people's hands are tied that are part of that where maybe they do have the answers, but hey, because of this piece of paper,
Yeah, they
we're
can't really talk
unable
about it.
to. Yeah, but not a single person has DM'd me about it that's even on their team. My my doors are always open, and so it's just an unfortunate situation, but it seems like the players are who gets it the worst, and that's mainly why I spoke out about that originally. Um,
Yeah, because Evo, when I look at Evo, I would think Evo has to be bringing in a couple of $1 million every year just by itself, especially since you're expanding to now 4 Evos now in different parts of the country, in the world, excuse me. Like it has to be bringing in enough money to where it can pay its staff members a decent wage for those 3 days. But it seems more like they're trying to basically, I don't want to say obfuscate, but maybe kind of try to get cheap labor.
yeah, and honestly, if because for a lot of events, what happens is if you have staff at times, depending on the event, the venue will give free rooms for staff. It just depends on how the deal is structured. You know, the contract on the back end. Um, so I can agree with if you get a free flight and hotel and you just have to work, you know, 2 3 days. That does seem worth it because it's a value proposition.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and the thing is with Evo's expansion, like you mentioned, because I've seen that Evo has several owners, including Sony. If it was considered a loss leader, they wouldn't be expanding as they are. Um, so a lot what happens is with a lot of these companies is for tax write-offs and such, they have to show that they're losing X amount of money for different things that they do. So if Evo was classified as that, as hey, it's something we do because it's in our business, but we lost $2 million, they wouldn't be making more Evo destinations. They would just be sticking with that one. So, like I said, like on paper, doesn't really make much sense. But also, no one came forward to say my numbers were wrong with the early bird signups for Evo 24. Las Vegas was, if you had all the entrants do the early bird, it was about $1.7 million, right? And then you have the Chipotle sponsorship, which just according to the streams, the analytics, the numbers, they would have paid about $2 million. So you're at 3.7 million just off the bat without even including things like those that businesses that have their own little setup that pay X amount per day. You don't have the YouTube channel. You don't have all these other revenue sources that they bring in. Um, so it's really sad, and comparatively with the low prize pool that they had, they needed so many different games to get certain people in the door as well. Which, you know, you have like a Call of Duty, you have a Valorant. You don't need three, four, five other games, right, for an event. They just have their main game.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very frustrating and a very sad time for the FGC, but this is why like everyone needs to start coming together and saying, "Hey, this isn't working. We have Evo as the gold standard of what it looks like to be succeeding, And if they're quote unquote struggling, then what does that say for your path for the future? It just says this is where we're headed, and that's not good. I don't think that's good for anyone.
Yeah, because it's just kind of crazy because you can't really see Evo's numbers, like their books or anything, to kind of get basically an accurate number. But like you said, nobody really disputed your number, so it kind of lends a lot of credence to what you said. And I kind of thought about it too at the same time. Like, well, if Chipotle is paying 2 million, plus they're getting revenue for all the ads they're showing on the streams, I'm like, I don't understand why the prize pool hasn't gone up from what it has. Like Capcom went up to $1 million, and I think next year they're doing 2 million. And it's like, well, none of the other tournaments are basically their prize pools are pretty much staying the same. And I'm like, okay, apparently this structure that y'all have, the way things have been working, are not working now because players are not really satisfied with the amount of money they're getting. But nobody seems to want to change the system to kind of either bring the money up or try to make some changes that can make the scene more appealing to more sponsors to actually bring up the money.
Exactly, and that includes organizations, whether in esports, people that want to throw some money around to support because, hey, maybe they saw the Street Fighter anime and thought it was cool enough to spend a few grand a year helping players that play the actual game. But with low prize pools, that directly impacts who's willing to even fund players, start their own teams, their own organizations, because a lot of these organizations run on prize pool winning splits. And I know that sounds controversial in the FGC because it's been a lot different compared to other esport genres. Like, for example, in Call of Duty, you'll see online tournaments for $25, $50 of having to pay to enter. And you don't see that in FGC. So there's clearly a lot of differences the FGC has compared to all these other genres that could be seen very clearly on paper. Um, but a lot of these things aren't considered controversial because using let's say Valorant for an example, they're what they do is they pay, it's an 80-20 split for prize pool winnings, but then they have an actual month to month salary for each player. So that's why the prize pool splits make sense because there's a salary that you're being paid anyways. And hey, if you win a big tournament, you're getting a piece of that too. That's really good, right? But for the FGC, a lot of people have told me too that oh, there's no prize pool splitting. And then I ask, well, what about salaries? Oh, well, there's not a lot of people that are getting salary. And it's like, okay, so there's a direct correlation then, right? Between do you guys want a prize pool split and just have a salary where people are taking a risk on you winning something to help them refund sending you somewhere, or do you want to try to go after whatever the prize pool is, and hope that you get room and board and travel accommodations, um, and that's a really big issue because the conversation immediately changes for players when it comes to organizations because all of a sudden, well, if you're not guaranteeing me money, then I need to see how I can leverage you to bring enough value to me to just pay you, right?
Hmm.
So all of a sudden it's what's your social media numbers like? If we come out with a shirt with your brand on it, how many shirts could you sell? So the conversation immediately changes along with the flow. And personally, I think it would be a lot simpler to do prize pool splits and to change the what the FGC might consider um, the meta, because I think if it worked for all these other esports leagues, then it should on paper also work for the FGC. But I think it's not on the orgs to bring this up. I think it's up to the players to understand the options that they have to move forward.
I said, "Cause you."
And yeah.
I about to say, cause you brought up a point that I was told I was crazy for saying it. I'm like, I said, if you're going to go and try to be an esports athlete, you need to build your brand up on your own before you go or before you get recruited or before you approach an org. Because now you can basically go to them and say, hey, these are my numbers. These are what I can push for sales. You have something to kind of back it up to demand a price instead of just being, well, you just need to be good at the game. Like that's one part of it, but you need to have your own brand, and the company needs to look at you and say, hey, if we, like you said, if we put the shirt out, how many of these shirts can you sell? How many of these fight sticks can you sell? How many of these buttons can you sell for us? Like, what are your numbers looking like? And I think that's the part that the FGC is kind of lacking on, is the business side of things. People seem to just think it's just, let's be good at the game, and that'll basically sell product. And I'm like, that's not the it's not the whole part of this. It's like it's one part of like a pie, but it's not the whole thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But again, it's the players that are forcing themselves into that position. So like let's say for sure I know that if I sent a specific player to Evo, they would win $10,000, just as an example, okay? Now, would I pay them 500 a month or 12 months for the whole year? That's 6 grand. And I just say, hey, by the way, I just want my 6 grand back. So when you win Evo, give me 6 grand, keep the rest. That's a much different conversation than, hey, I want to pay you, but you're telling me I can't get a piece of the prize pool that I'm funding you for this entire year, send you out to places. Um, Again, like where do I make the $6,000 back if that's what you demand? $500 salary a month. And the issue with a lot of these players is if they went after a deal that says, yeah, you know what? We like the idea of guaranteeing X amount of dollars of salary a month to represent someone. And when all is said and done with my winnings, that'll just pay them back. But hey, if I'm good enough, I'll make even more money anyways. I don't care. That additional conversation of tell me what your brand is, show me social media numbers, show me all these metrics, what you can sell, that doesn't have to occur because you already settled where the money's going and how it's coming back. But a lot of players just seem in FGC to not realize that. They're kind of setting themselves up to have that additional conversation of, oh, don't worry, I'm worth 500 a month because I can get you a million new eyes on your product a month from all my social media combined. I can sell 20 shirts to all my friends and family with $20 a shirt. Um, so it's really about the players not understanding where they're putting themselves when negotiating. But you also can't blame the players because they're players, right? They're not
Mhm.
management. They're not so it so you have to come out of the gate with explaining these things to players and hoping it spreads around and the entire community eventually realizes, oh, okay, so we're on path A right now. What if there is a path B? There could be a path B. Oh yeah, you just need to do this and this. Oh, interesting. That seems doable. Let's try that. Hey everyone, let's try this. Um and that I think is what a lot of people are trying to do a lot more because it's becoming more and more apparent and public that the FGC, even the tournament organizers, everyone is struggling, and it's a bad way, a bad position to find yourself in to try to. It's not like, oh, we're succeeding, but what would a different path look like? It's, oh no, we're all struggling, we got to find a different path or we're just drowned out, we're done. um
Hey, what are
but
you?
yeah, to your point.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, what?
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, but to your point, if players are going to not go a certain way, they should expect to have these conversations about, again, the social media numbers, what you can sell, etc. um because it's how it works, it's how it goes down because of the path.
All right. So, what has been the most resistance you've seen from the FGC in basically embracing this? Because
um
it seems like everybody seems to be satisfied and dissatisfied at the same time with the current system.
so I think, which is very unfortunate, I'll say that a lot of players have started to find reasons not to go to their locals, not to go to their regionals, not to go to a major. There's these little reasons, even playing in online tournaments, right? To the point where the sense of in person community is starting to shift to a in
Every
the
man for
past.
self.
Just that a happy memory, a good memory of the past, that where you can still see certain malls are open across the US, but there's a lot of malls that also closed, right? So
Hmm.
the FGC is in that area right now where you're seeing a lot of places closing, but hey, like online's going well. You see for us in the US, TNS almost every week gets over 200 entrants for every single major FGC game tournament online that they put on. So I think the mindset that players have right now, other than the kind of stereotypical, oh, this game is bad because, I think now it's shifting to, why are we going to leave the house to go to a tournament when there's almost a tournament every single night of the week online? So the different mentality shift is what's driving all these differences occurring. But the issue, which is why I try to tell everyone, support your local, isn't just because of how orgs look at players, which we can get into, but also right now, like, you don't want to be in a position 5 years, 10 years from now where hey, where's the nearest local? Oh, it's 4 to 6 hours drive from here versus, oh, what happened to local an hour away? Oh, they closed down because everyone wanted to just game at home. Less and less people started showing up, which got the venue owner a little pissed off. And yeah, so therefore we're not doing it anymore. But hey, there's one again, like 4 or 6 hours away if you want to go. Um, but yeah, as a community, there needs to be um, this mindset of if you don't want to see locals going away, you gotta support the locals. If you don't want to see the regionals going away, you gotta support the regionals. You gotta dive into what makes the FGC so great and what sustained it, even with all these negative aspects, which is the community itself.
Because I can agree with that. Because even our local scene, like we've actually gotten stronger because during COVID we were like one of the few scenes in our city in our state that basically stayed open and was able to keep locals going and local tournaments going. It was rough during the COVID and all that stuff, but our TO basically kept it afloat until things started to get a little bit better, especially with Street Fighter 6 coming out. And I've always said the locals are where it's basically like your G League or should be your G League. This is where you grow your new talent at right here to try to push them towards the top instead of just every man for himself, which is seems to be like what the community is kind of starting to shift to.
Oh yeah, when it comes to orgs, especially, if orgs are looking again for the prize pool split to at least send a player that they know is going to place well, they have to know how well you do offline because online is absolutely different than in person. I've met people that have been what esports usually refers to as online warriors, which means all they do is play online, whether tournaments, ranked, etc., but they never go in person. I've seen a lot of players that are like that, where someone takes a chance on them, sends them somewhere, and they get knocked out very early, just lacking that experience. But again, at what point is it even for yourself where you have this opportunity to perform well? You have to give yourself the best possible circumstance of you performing the best that you can. And for the most part, from what we've seen, it's everything is about offline. Whether that is just because there's a difference also between PC and console, which many agree that there is. Um, Whether it's people are more, the noise gets to them, where at home there is no noise, but they don't know until they're in a building with 100 people talking among each other and oh wow, how do we concentrate? There's all these little aspects that could impact an online player's performance when they go offline.
Yeah, because I
So
can.
that's why locals, even if you don't enjoy going or you'd rather not go, you should go because it's getting that number one exposure, which I see a lot of locals are going the Twitch route, YouTube route. They're showcasing on social media cool VODs of moments. But it's not just the exposure, the community building, but it's also about just adding actual value to yourself. And that's important. So if you want to be as selfish as humanly possible, the only way you could is if you are constantly ranking high at your locals too. So people have to not forget that either.
So basically, what you're saying is basically the local should be basically your proving grounds before you basically for an org or something invest any kind of like time or money into you.
Oh yeah, and we've seen people that perform so well and consistently online that orgs are perfectly okay with taking a chance on them because hey, we can share a Tekken banner or Street Fighter 6 banner literally every week because this person is consistently top 8 and for our brand we we like that. So we're going to do that but that's again it's the weird and unusual FGC thing because it's the requirements for every org in the FGC and what they're looking for is different at all times. Sometimes orgs are looking for players that might not rank well, but they want more social media presence. They want someone that can clip their content and at least share it once in a while. There's orgs that someone under their org already has been begging the owner or the decision maker to sign new players that hey like please sign my friend, please sign my friend. Where in other esports especially everything is merit based. It's kind of like how regular sports is, you know, you can
Yeah,
have a team full of people that absolutely hate each other, but if they're winning championships, they'll swallow it up, you know, they'll say, okay, like we'll deal with this person because you know this is a championship we're gonna win, and that's perfectly fine with me. Um, but again, it's FGC created this landscape of like there's sometimes signings that everyone collectively does like a face palm like why did this happen kind of thing and that's that's why too because for some reason in FGC you can have 100,000 Twitter followers, a million Twitch followers, etc. And a team would rather pick someone else because oh, this player has no brand or anything, but you know what? They seem like they're pretty good with some graphic design and our org could use someone like that. So our way of getting a graphic designer will also just send them places with the team, give them an official spot. It's like, well, why aren't you making the decision again to sign this other person that's very established with a similar deal? Um, so and I know players see that. Um, I don't think it's the player's fault. I think that comes down to the org and how the org operates. Um, and I'm not in a position to boss an org around any org for that matter to say, hey, you have to do specifically this or that, whatever. You know, they're their own entity. They make their own decisions, but I think though lately, especially due to the low payouts, due to everyone struggling, players are now watching orgs and are more willing to speak up and say, hey, why would you give this spot to this person when there's someone 10 times as better, 10 times as well known instead? And I think that's a good shift. I don't think the negativity is good. Like, I don't think people should bash orgs for their own internal decisions on what they choose to do. But it's good to see more accountability being done, just across the entire FGC board, it seems.
And that could try and transition to another topic we had, like with orgs and stuff now, seemingly in the FGC kind of just packing it up and calling it quits. Do you think it's more because of that? But just they're just picking up these players that are really aren't that good, but they might have a big social media following.
So I think every org has their goals and how they want to build their quote unquote brand slash company, but mainly brand. Most orgs aren't traditional companies, they're just a face of something. With a lot of orgs, what's been happening, as you just mentioned, a lot are, especially in FGC, shutting down. Other esports, you see orgs come and go all the time from bad decision making the first year or two. Some that just restructure by letting go half their roster, half their staff, etc. But for the FGC, it's very closed off, I've noticed. Um, so for example, I'll mention a very common point throughout all of esports, and then someone within an org that has decision making power will try to tell me that I'm wrong because all they know is the FGC. They know nothing about the rest of the esports space. So when I see orgs closing down, that's the first thought that comes to my mind that, oh, they're just not privy. They don't have the knowledge of, oh, like, we understand what FPS genre does. We understand what strategy games does, etc. They just know FGC, but again, compared to every other esports industry, FGC as a foundation is very, there's really bad decision making. There's really a lot of people with a lot of experience that are surprised hearing certain things that they should have known like their first year of being involved, but they're saying, "Oh, we have a decade doing this," and you kind of look at them, and your first thought when they say that is, "Dude, you had a decade and you still don't know about this?" Like some of the stuff is a Google search away, and for a decade you just haven't even thought about this. And so when you look at it from that perspective, it's not unusual to see orgs closing down. Um, Orgs close down every year for a multitude of reasons, right? A lot um, are the fast burn where someone comes in, creates an org because they're a multimillionaire and this is how they want to spend their extra money. So they spend all their money compiling a roster, sending the roster out, compete, everything. But they end up just losing so much money the first year that they say, oh, well, actually, this is costing me a little bit more than I thought. So, like, good luck, guys, but this isn't for me. But then for the FGC, you have a lot of these orgs that have done a lot in the FGC that are closing down. And a lot of it. So, what people need to understand is when it comes to orgs, you have to think of them like an NBA team, a baseball team, um, a hockey team, etc. What do those teams do? They have merchandise, they try to sell their own sponsor spots, whether in their stadiums and their online, etc. All orgs are is a very small version of established teams like that. So it could be as little as, hey, the local deli that usually gives us $2,000 a year to send 3 or 4 players to a major tournament. They said they couldn't do it this year, and we don't have anyone else. We don't know how to get funding from anyone else. So, hey, I guess, we're done for this year. And then from there, you have these owners that say, well, if we couldn't get the funding for that this year from these guys, we're probably not going to get it next year either. And then it starts to settle in the idea of, why am I doing this? Why am I spending time on this? Do I want to do this? Do I have other things I'd rather do? And I think that's the path that a lot of these org owners kind of go through. Um, because you can ask a lot of people, even TOs that are in charge of putting together regionals, like, hey, like, you guys pay your bills just doing this? Usually the answer is no. Usually the answer could also be, actually, we're losing money, and the day job, I didn't get that promotion that I wanted, and maybe I shouldn't do this anymore. So it's a sad thing to see, but I think it those are the instances for these org owners that truly make them be placed in the, do I want to do this? Do I not want to do this? And unfortunately, because there's so little to gain from the FGC as an org, the answer is usually ends up being, we don't want to do this. Some end up trying to keep going because, oh, we don't want to let down the players because we believe in them and all that. But you could only do that for so long until things start really getting bad. And yeah, it's unfortunate. I genuinely hate seeing orgs closing down. And again, some of these orgs have given great opportunities to a lot of players, and they should be mourned, but at the same time, they need to be used as an example to move forward, to say, hey, how do we not allow this to happen as a community? Like, what changes do we need to do? Um, because me, for example, I've spoken to quite a few people outside of esports, just in general business life and such. And hey, what are you doing DFF lately? Oh, I'm in FGC. Oh, is that something to invest in for us? Is that something that maybe we can dip our toes into? And I have to say, because they're my friends, hey guys, 2 orgs just shut down in the past 3 months that were considered established. Like, all this, and there's no prize pool splits. Oh well, how are we gonna get money? Well, you can try to get money elsewhere, like your friends or something. Well, yeah, then maybe not. So it's yeah, I apologize for rambling,
Oh no, you
but
good.
really, really heavy topic, orgs, and them shutting down,
Yeah, cause I'm looking at like the money's starting to flow into the scene now, but it seems like it's not being spent or shared the way it should be to basically keep everybody afloat. And I'm trying to.
Yeah,
I
no.
don't know if we could. I don't know. Maybe if they increase the entry fees. I know a lot of people saying that it's time for the entry fees to start going up, and maybe they can do more invitation only tournaments. so that sponsors can get more screen time for their players, and maybe they'll invest more money into tournaments like that.
I honestly think it's more so working on a foundation of the FGC more than anything. Like for example, if you're a regional TO, you're someone that puts on a regional as a TO, you're working all year a little bit at a time to make it happen. Why aren't you taking advantage of the local newspaper, the local news station, the local radio station? Why aren't you exploring these things that gather the community? Because especially for those, they usually take place in a major city, major US city, right? So why
Hmm.
aren't you taking advantage of some of these things that are considered free? If you tell a local news station, hey, we're filling up this convention center because of this, and we'd love to talk to you, they will have you on for free. It's a story, it is their job to do that. If they cover local Girl Scouts are selling cookies at an elementary school this week, go and check it out. Why do you not think they wouldn't cover a convention center being filled up for a regional of all these people that are flying in as well? Why aren't you going after newspapers that need things to write about? Where all of a sudden, if you're in a major city like Chicago, well, guess what? Now every household in Chicago that gets the newspaper will see it, and they might say, "Hey, you know what? I used to play this game growing up. I didn't know it was, up the road or 10 or 15 minutes from me. Let me go check it out. Might as well." But you see that a lot of these people that are making the decisions, putting on these events, they're not doing the easy and free legwork that's afforded to them. They'd rather just focus on getting the players in, and that's really bad because eventually there'll be a point where a player, instead of saying, oh, like, it's gonna cost me so much money that I can't go, um now I don't even want to go. Like, have you seen the prices this year compared to 3 or 4 years ago? Like, I'd rather go on a cruise or something for a week versus spending a day or two competing at this regional. And so a lot of this player goodwill that's been built up for decades and decades and decades for the FGC, it's dwindling really fast. And again, it doesn't help that players are noticing that all that's happening is they're being more taken advantage of. Prize pools haven't really changed much. Everyone's struggling. It's bad out there IRL for a lot of people. Like guys, like, why aren't you picking up the phone at a local news station? Why aren't you a phone call, an email, anything? Like, get the word out, Like, why aren't you guys taking that extra step? And again, it'll always come down to the consumer, which are the players. And that's not good. I want players to hold these people more accountable, especially when you know, like, okay, this regional will be for sure this month, next year, 12 months, 11 months from now. Dude, you had 11 or 12 months to tell the local newspaper, the local news station, etc., and you didn't want to. Instead, you'd rather raise ticket prices X amount. Instead, you'd rather spend your time convincing players that you're the good guy. You're you're this wonderful individual that's making all these risks and like, dude, like, no, like, stop that. You need to be held accountable, do better. There's a lot of us here that volunteer that are willing to help you, but you also got to help yourself and stop taking it out on the players.
Mm,
And, for those reasons, a lot of players, a lot of TOs, they do not like me because I am more than happy to call stuff out like that. I'm more than happy to say, dude, I don't know. I don't care if you spent a decade or 2 decades or 5 years, whatever, doing this. You're doing it wrong. Please fix it, not just for you, but for those you're negatively impacting by not fixing it.
yeah. 'Cause I know me and my wife, we looked at prices for like going to Evo, and we just like by the time we got everything together, and we like, man, do we really want to spend all this money just to go for like 3 days and then come back? And it's just like, I don't know, it's getting to the point now where it's like I would kind of almost like the online people. I would rather just stay at home and just play online than spend about $2,000-3,000 just to go for 2 or 3 days.
Exactly. And the thing is, too, with every new title, there will be a new X amount of players that will try to enter tournaments, etc., feed into the system as to speak. But the issue is if you have that bad of a starting point and a foundation, you have to start fixing that because look, 5 or even 10 years from now, if we're being nice about it, if this continues, there might just be an online official league for Capcom, right? Where people will maybe enter an online tournament once a week for X amount of weeks, get X amount of points so that they qualify. Maybe Capcom will fly out the top 16 of every region to one a year thing, and that'll be the new FGC.
No, I honestly think that's
Because
coming anyway. I think that's coming regardless. I think they're trying to find a way to make this a worldwide thing, and they're trying to figure out a way to get around the TOs and the orgs themselves, and basically try to fund it through them.
well, it is going down that path for sure. I mean, I've seen that from last year's Evo because I've only been in FGC for about a year now. But just from seeing how Evo operated, you could see it from a mile away. And so I think what, and this is a little bit of speculation, but I would more so call it an educated guess. Like I think this is about 70 to 80% factual. From what you see, even to qualify for Capcom Cup, Tekken World Tour, these entities that have the video games, Bandai, Capcom, etc., they're in their own way keeping the regionals afloat by saying, hey, you guys have to attend this regional possibly to try to go after the big prize. So I don't think that like these companies are trying to find a way to take down the TOs and stuff. I think the TOs are actually due to a level of incompetence. They have handed over a lot to these game companies that willingly accepted it by saying, okay, guys, we'll do whatever you want. If you don't want PCs, if you want console, we will get consoles for our regionals. We do not care. Whatever you say, just please add us to the list of, hey, to all players, if you want to qualify for this big prize pool, you got to, if you're in an area, attend this thing. So I honestly think most, if not all, the TOs are already being, at least on paper through contracts, controlled by the game companies to a much bigger extent than the average player realizes. Um, I think orgs are silent about that because they're just trying to take it day by day, trying to thrive, survive, etc. But, these are the reasons why when people say things with facts like, hey, this is looking bad, everyone should know that this is looking bad. This is also why there's no pushback when it comes to TOs specifically telling, again, oh, DFF, you're wrong about the $2 million minimum Chipotle Evo deal. They're unable to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm correct. Because I know with X amount of streaming numbers, that's what you expect, let alone at the venue itself, let alone paying extra to be the only quote unquote bigger brand. Like instead of getting Chipotle and McDonald's, for example, just make Chipotle pay extra so you don't have to get McDonald's, but you're still getting a little bit more out of Chipotle. These are very basic event business tactics, and again, I will continue politely as I can, calling out a lot of people as I see things coming up because it is bad out there. It could be salvaged, but the direction it keeps going into is really, really bad. And with orgs, they want people to be as happy as possible. That's why a lot of players, even on the posts of other players that are sponsored, saying, oh, we're not going to attend because Saudi Arabia. If you look, a lot of players under other orgs are basically saying, hey, we can't talk about this, right? And there's a reason for that. And I hope the average player starts picking up on these little things because these little things matter.
Mm. That's actually kind of interesting. I didn't really pay too much attention. I have seen people saying that, but I haven't really been paying attention to the org members basically not really speaking too much on the whole Saudi thing. But I'm honestly looking at it and feeling like eventually Evo is going to be sold to them, and a lot of the other majors that are left are probably going to sell to them as well. And not only that, they're having their own tournaments where they're funding it for like $400,000. So to me, it's not a question of how long; it's a question of when are they going to take over.
Yeah, but again, I think this will be inevitable, especially with just generally speaking how people would rather just shop on Amazon versus going to the mall. I think technology will make a lot of things inevitable to an extent. I don't think the FGC is privy to being the 0.000 infinite one percentile where that's not the case, but um I think there should be a level of I don't want to say gratitude, but just a level of acceptance when it comes to, wow, like there's at least an entity with heavy enough pockets to fund something like this for years to come, and we should be thrilled that there is a path where if we want to take this seriously as possible, there's a chance we'll get this big payday. There's a chance. And that's I think what keeps a lot of players going. Um I talk to a lot of players a lot of the time, and many of them, depending on a lot of different factors, they don't want to pursue this anymore. But that doesn't mean that that's everyone. That doesn't mean that someone that just picked up Street Fighter 6 today has that mindset of not, oh, I'll just play this for 5 minutes and put it down and collect dust. Maybe they could be the next punk. They could be the next big player, and they feel that. And when they research and see, okay, if I put this amount of time, I dedicate this amount of time to this, what's the potential? It's that matters to a lot of people. And a lot of people, they just want to be paid for their time, right? Like
Mhm.
they don't mind being paid $100 a year if they feel that they're only putting $100 worth of work into it, and the rest of the time they're goofing off, having fun, talking to their friends, going to places, hanging out in Discord chats, having conversations on Twitter. It's a fun thing. It's not a job. So who cares that $100 a year, whatever. But yeah, but again, I think the main focus for players should be to try and understand where things are in FGC and where they're headed, and to share your thoughts with your friends. Because I think a lot of players are afraid to speak their mind. They're afraid to ask questions at times, and I don't think that's good. I think lately, the past maybe 2, 3 months, things have been shifting to where players feel they could be more vocal. But you know, for the players out there, you shouldn't take all the responsibility of this, but you should hold those accountable that could work with you on making these changes. You got to hold them just as accountable as you hold yourselves, right? Because you going to a regional, you want there to be an extra 100 people that you never met if you're a player going to a regional. And
Mhm.
guess what? The person putting on a regional would love to see that too, right? But it's not always on the player. It's not, okay, Punk, tell all your friends to go to this place on this date and time. It's like, whoa, like if you guys are relying on that, you guys have to stop relying on that. Be more creative. Explore these things that won't cost you a penny, but might bring in an extra few dozen people on even just one of the days. Expose people to what you're doing. Um, because if all you're doing is telling players already showing up to tell their friends most likely already know about said tournament, right? You're not trying
Mhm.
to reach the same people. You're trying to bring in new people. You're trying to bring in people that might not have anything to do that Friday night or Saturday afternoon that, hey, you know what? Yeah, we'll stop by. Oh, only $10 to spectate? Shit. Okay. Yeah, I'll spend $10 and check this out because there's apparently going to be a ton of people there. That sounds like fun. So there's the mindset is changing. It needs to keep changing, and I personally like that a lot more people are, especially players, are showcasing that, hey, like we have opinions, we have our own voice. This is how we feel, this is what we think. Even just putting it out there. Now, given if it's a really bad take, you should expect to to
Get roasted.
not get the best. Yeah, but yeah, but at the end of the day, I don't know if you feel that, but it used to be like, what's the new once a week Twitter thing? Now it's what's the new daily Twitter thing where someone has a take that everyone is like, whoa, 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 no, or yes, or we like the way you're thinking, but you're far off, etc.
I
But I like that. I like seeing that though.
I said I think that's kind of I like seeing it too, but I understand it from the player's perspective because they're looking at do I am I really wanting to do this to take the backlash from the community if I say something that they don't like? And I think a lot of people look at it like, I don't want to upset people. If I say something that they don't like, they're gonna go to the org, and then the org is gonna come to me, and then I got to deal with that. Then I got to make a public apology because I think the worst thing that happened to the scene is that they brought politics into the scene. And I think that's the worst thing that ever happened in the community because it should only really be about the game and just playing the game. That's pretty much it. Like your personal opinions, not personal opinion, but your personal politics should pretty much you should pretty much keep that to yourself. We should like we're here to play a video game. We shouldn't be talking about politics while we're trying to play a video game.
Oh yeah, but I also see that when it comes to politics, especially in the FGC, I firmly believe the very large majority of the player base is very neutral. All they want to do is play the game. They want to learn to get better. They want to interact with players that beat them and ask them, hey, like, how are you beating me so bad? Or giving advice to players that they beat that after the set come up to them, hey, man, like, how do you counter this? I think a lot of players fall under that category of we don't care about your politics or anything about you. We just want to play the game and call it a day. Like, this is how we escape from IRL. This is how we just go at our life. Like, this is fun for us to just compete at a local or just having fun with people or meeting new people. A lot of people that go to locals for the first time, they're there to try to find people that have enjoyed something that they've enjoyed. So
Yeah.
even though there's a lot of people and players and brands that are like, "Hey, you gotta think this certain way, do things this way, etc." Um, it looks that way on the surface, but I think it's also because the majority just don't care enough to comment. They don't want to post on social media every day. This is what we think. This is how we feel. This is this. This is. It's like no, like people just want to play the game, enjoy themselves, and move on to something else, or go to bed, or whatever they're doing.
Yeah. But it's just that
Yeah,
small that small vocal minority that are just like extremely loud on that side. And I think that sometimes it feels like the orgs kind of listen to them a little more than they should.
Well, the orgs have to go by what they see. So no one wants negativity thrown at them, especially if you're a brand, right? Like if you're on the front page of the New York Times and it says McDonald's recalls 500 locations for beef because of mad cow disease, you don't want to be McDonald's, right? So
Mhm,
with a lot of these orgs, they would rather just not say anything or just have that as part of their brand, which is fine. That's their brand. We see whether it's political or otherwise. We see actors, we see movie studios, we see sports teams. There's certain things for whatever brand you are that you want to fall into. And so if orgs want to fall into a specific category of, hey, we like people that only wear glasses. That's cool. If you want that to be part of your brand, that's 100% your decision, right?
mhm,
Um but I think people, especially players, seeing the orgs that exist, they kind of put him on a pedestal as an aspiring baseball player in high school would put the New York Yankees, where okay, like what could we do to potentially get on the Yankees one day? Well, the last thing you're gonna do is say, "Hey, I wish the Yankees never existed" in a public forum, right?
mm,
So there's a lot of give and take. That's also why I refer to orgs as brands in the FGC because it's very much it's the category makes a lot more sense for what they are versus what they appear to be. Um, there's a lot of players that think orgs have an endless amount of cash and can sign 1,000 players if they wanted to, and that's not the case. So why are you treating an org like they're that? Don't treat them for what you think they are. Treat them for what they are. And I think that is much healthier too. Um, but yeah, I get it. It's when you have a brand as well, you don't want to piss anyone off. You want to stay as far away as possible unless you absolutely have to, or unless it's something industry specific that you want your brand to align with or not align with. Like I've seen orgs speak out against um, women being treated poorly. And you know what? That's awesome. That's a great thing to add to your org branding that you want everyone to be treated the same, regardless of who they are. Hey, that's awesome. I would support that org. I've also seen orgs that are like all men are terrible. It's like, oh well, I wouldn't want to support that org. But if that's again because they're more so a brand than a business entity, um, they as a brand you can literally be for um, killing babies. And hey, if that's your brand and that makes sense to you, then that makes sense.
mhm. And just let the market decide.
Don't believe in you being able to kill babies, but if that's your brand, that's your brand. I can't argue against that. I could just say that's wrong and I would not support that.
I get what you're saying. You're basically like, if that's your brand, pretty much, stick with it. But it's kind of more so like you're saying, just let the market decide. Like you can go ahead and have that be your brand, but it might not work out too well for you in the market.
Oh yeah, and I don't want to say like real orgs or anything, but real companies will always aim to be as neutral as possible or as very much liked as possible to not have any negative towards them. So if you ever see a quote unquote company not abiding by that, and there's either something else going on or you're seeing them as a company when you should see them as, again, like a brand is a better example in that case.
Mm,
um
I'm gonna say, 'cause most orgs I've seen, they pretty much try to stay pretty neutral on everything. Like they really don't take a firm stance on one thing or another. And I think that's
yeah.
probably a good thing because like you said, you don't want to damage your brand or tie your brand to something that may not go over so well with the large majority.
Oh, absolutely. Because all you're doing is harming yourself. You're harming the future of your brand or franchise, however you want to categorize what said org is. But that comes with experience too. Like only those that have seen or have the know-how on the back end, etc., really think that way. Um, and for the FGC, although I think it's cool that at any time someone could literally make a Twitter account, call themselves an org, and quote unquote sign people but not pay them, etc., and all of a sudden they're seen as an org. I think that's cool that the barrier to entry is could be that low. But that being said, Um, if you're talking to an org, in that instance, you don't know if they're an established org that's been around for a decade. You don't know if they're an org that has any kind of funding. You don't know if they're just equivalent to like an online group. And I think it's good that at least nowadays we have Liquipedia that's a good source that takes the time to listen to people who orgs that sign known players to add those orgs to said players' profiles to add legitimacy. So when people look at for Tekken, for example, Jackie Tran, you'll see Pulse Esports signed Jackie Tran. So because there's now a way to verify orgs a little better, you can just by doing research like that see who you think they are and who is just kind of going with the flow, trying to build something. And I would recommend if you're someone that's passionate because the barrier to entry is that low in FGC where you want to try starting an org or something, you should try it out. And no one should give anyone slack for trying something new out, especially if they're passionate and they're willing to figure things out. I think we've all been there at some point in our lives. Um, but again, like this is why though players should not look at every quote unquote org as New York Yankees because they're just not.
Yeah.
And some that could be considered the New York Yankees aren't anywhere close. to the New York Yankees level, right? So it's we all have to chill out a little bit, reevaluate what matters, who people actually are, what people actually do in FGC, etc., and putting in that little bit of legwork. Because dude, when I tell you, I have seen the worst takes imaginable by someone who was quote unquote established, and they're being given positive feedback just because they're quote unquote established. It breaks my heart. It
Yeah.
breaks my heart, and it continues on and on and on.
Yeah, trust me, I've seen that a couple times where a known player or an established player, current player, even now has a really dumb take, but people are basically saying, "No, no, 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 you're correct on this, man. Everybody else is wrong." And I'm like, "This is just stupid." But if you say it, like their whole little community is just dogpile on you.
Oh yeah, exactly. But that again, I think FGC went that path forward. They decided, hey, this is how we want things to run. This is how we want to build the face of the FGC for different players and such, and how we want to treat them. And like a lot of the conversations I've had privately with a lot of players are basically along the lines of, wow, DFF, we wish we could say what you say, but we don't want to get banned. We don't want to have the community talking bad about us, etc. And what's really sad is at times when I've spoken out and someone, let's say a player, has agreed with me, well, sometimes the people that don't like what I said will screen capture, including that player's response, post it, and all of a sudden, said player, because they agreed with a point or something, there's players that'll say, we don't want to play with you anymore. Never reach out to us again. How dare you? Um, and I think that is what is destroying the community aspect of the FGC
Yeah,
faster than anything else.
because it shouldn't be like that. It should be everyone should be open to constructive criticism. You even if you don't agree with that person's point, you can still say yours perspective on it and just have that agree to disagree type moment right there. Like y'all might just not agree. It doesn't mean you just have to cancel this person. They can't come to tournaments anymore. It just seems like that's the response now of the community. Oh, I don't agree with what you said. You need to be banned from this community. You need to be banned from this tournament. And like you said, it's starting to get to the point now where it's starting to it could really ruin the scene and getting people to the point where they don't even want to come into the scene now. They look around and say, "Man, I just want to play the game, dude. I don't want to have to deal with all this stuff. I'll just stick over here and play with my friends."
Absolutely. And, again, but so I'm no longer a player. So, in a sense, it's not my responsibility to do what players have to do together to create certain kinds of change. Some things are up to the players, where like I can do certain things to make change, but players have to do certain things too. But I would say that like a lot of people have felt that my criticism, like I could be correct, but the way I say something isn't how it should be, etc. But I think at the end of the day, TOs, players, everyone involved, they have their roles. If they want to see change, they have to take the initiative to create it. And the FGC, when I first got into it on the esports side, the first reason that I saw something in FGC is because of just the community being there for this long. So there's nothing to say that change can't happen for the better, etc. It's just I don't I don't like that when people try to create change as well with the best of intentions. Like, I know people have said, like, oh, DFF, people don't like you because you shit on this player for having a bad take, or you're bad mouthing TOs. They take it as that, but I'm just trying to make things make sense, at least on paper. Because if things don't make sense on paper, there's no funding from anyone and the community dies anyways. And I'm trying to prevent that. And I there is a level of respect that I have for those that put in work for a very long time, but at the same time, they don't get a pass just because they've been here for a long time. Like, we got
Hmm.
to stop giving passes to people for not doing the best that they can, not growing things properly. We can't say, oh, but that's okay because they've been around for this long. Because only the FGC does that, and that's why the FGC is also where it is today. Because, we can sit here all day long and talk about how the online community continues to grow as the offline scenes continue to die out, and oh wow, look at what this org said, look at what this player said, and all these different aspects. But what makes the FGC so good on paper is the community, and we have to not let it die. And the only way to do that is to start shifting even just a little bit. Now look, I'm not suggesting that players, you know, let people shit talk them online without a response. I'm not saying that let people that are notorious for bullies keep bullying people without any resistance, etc. What I am saying is, like, if players don't feel comfortable openly sharing their ideas on how to make things better, or even just saying, hey, you know what, I agree with this person, or hey, you know what, I actually disagree with this person, that's no longer community. When you think of a community, you think everyone together working towards a common goal. And um and I hope that the majority of players, because I do personally feel it is the majority of players, that you guys could stand up and say, hey, like, we're going to start holding people more accountable. We're going to share our thoughts. Because that's also, dude, like, can you imagine doing something wrong for 2 or 3 years when you could have just said to a friend, hey, is this how you do this? And your friend, within 2 minutes, explains why you're wrong? Why can't you do that in an FGC without it just going into the worst direction ever?
Kind of like
Makes
what
no
you said.
sense.
Kind of like what you said. People don't want to offend OGs and certain players that are what they consider high status players. Like you don't want to say, "Oh, well, I don't want to say nothing to Punk the wrong way because he might, make a video about me or he might say something about me on Twitter or whatever." Everybody kind of bows down to them. and I think it's not a
Oh
good
yeah.
thing.
Well, that's why I take my position very seriously as being someone that can't play anyways, because in my position, like if I wanted to right now, I could literally ask Punk on Twitter in a tweet. I can say, "Hey Punk, I heard you went 0-1 with a player called High School. Why didn't you finish the set?" Can you imagine if a random player did that? And if Punk retweeted and said, "Screw this guy knows nothing." Like the player saying it would be canceled, right? But
Hmm.
can't do that towards me. I mean, people could unfollow me, block me, whatever they do. And to their credit, a lot of people do that. And I mean, there's people that I would talk to regularly that, I think, oh, let me go on their Twitter page. Oh, they blocked me on Twitter. That's random, right? But that's also why I do what I do. I call out what I see. I stand up for what I feel is right. Like for example, there was this Tekken incident where a um, a Twitch streamer named Planted Medusa in the EU um, region. They had a friend, another player that they knew, do a money match that was requested by someone in the North America region that's under an org. They played the first set for $100. Um, it was asked if they wanted to do double or nothing. Said player went ahead with double or nothing, lost again. And then afterwards, they said, we're not going to pay this player, even though we lost the money match fair and square in front of over 500 people on this Twitch streamer stream. We're not going to do this because they're a Nazi. They have hate speech, etc. And I saw a little bit about it on Twitter. And so I know players would say, hey, like a money match is a money match, but you're not going to speak out about it, right? To many players' credits, I saw a lot on all political sides speaking out and saying, hey, even if you disagree, a money match is a money match. You agree to it, you have to pay, etc. But me, I felt that because it kept escalating, because I probably unpopular to belief, I'm not on Twitter 24/7. I don't see every new thing. There's times where I'll go into a Twitch stream to support like a Street Fighter or Tekken player, and they'll mention to me, "Hey, did you see this on Twitter?" And I'll say, "What?" And I'll pull it up, right? But in that instance, because I knew what org it was, I made a post and I said, "Hey, such and such org, um, just letting you know that one of your players basically lost a money match in front of a lot of people on social media. Things are escalating. This needs to be resolved. Please step in." And so for me, that's me holding not the player, but the org also accountable because it was escalating. And kudos to the org for, um, I think it was 22 or 23 hours later on Twitter, responded to not just me, but a few others, basically saying, hey, we know that it's a player problem and we don't have to step in, but we are. Um, As far as I know, there hasn't been an update from anyone on a situation. But again, if I was a player doing that, I would get a lot more hate. I would probably lose a lot of friends on it, etc. But it's people have to not be as afraid anymore to do that because when I look at a situation like that where I want to hold people accountable politely, um, if let's say I lost 5 friends in my circle of players, if I was also a player because I said that, I should feel better that those quote unquote friends probably weren't friends to begin with if that's what made them no longer want to associate or just talk to me. Um, and I think for the players that feel vulnerable, you guys should know that, again, the majority of players in the FGC don't care who you are, what you do, they just want to play.
Right. And that's very
And
true.
there's, like, don't get me wrong, like, if you have a felony for something crazy and people know about it and tell you, you should definitely use that in your decision making, whether you want to associate with someone, etc. But when it comes to like a tweet or maybe a video or just random thoughts, if people are going to add space between you and them because of something that you feel is right, that you're either pointing out or you're doing, they weren't your friends to begin with. And that's okay because there's plenty of potential friends out there that don't care.
Mhm.
And behind the scenes, especially when things I do on Twitter blow up, I get a lot of DMs privately, either saying we agree, we disagree, but we're not gonna not associate with you anymore, or hey, we disagree. Maybe I'll unfollow you on Twitter, but we're still cool privately. And like, if you need anything, like, definitely reach out and stuff. So, that's also why people say Twitter FGC isn't real. I don't know if you've heard that, if your audience has heard that,
No, I've heard it
but
before.
there's a lot of players that refuse to even create a Twitter account because of all this stuff. And there's like for me, when I was with an org scouting for players, finding players for events or some online TOs, I would actually, because a lot of players, like if you look at a TNS, for example, for a Start GG for a Street Fighter 6, and you count the amount of entrants that have a Twitter on their bio that you can just click and it brings you straight to their Twitter, and those that don't, but maybe they have a Twitch or a Discord, it's usually about 50-50, which means 50% of people that usually compete in tournaments aren't even on those platforms. The only time that they hear about stuff is if a friend that is tells them, maybe a day or two or a week later. Um, so a lot of people, especially as time goes on, I think are realizing that too. I've seen some players just outright leave Twitter because they're like, "Hey, this isn't good for my mental. Like this is too much for me, etc." And you feel bad, but again, at that point, you realize, oh, like the already quote unquote like smaller pool of players that compete and stuff. If you're saying half of them aren't on Twitter, how much does Twitter and opinions and stuff actually matter in the long run too? So these are just a lot of things that players need to really think about. They need to think about not just how they build value for themselves as a player if they want to try to be a professional in this, um, who you hang around with, what you do, etc. But a lot of players need to start really just taking a step back and thinking about these things because I can guarantee about at least a portion that care as much as they do about even things like Twitter, they might it might click that hey, like maybe I shouldn't care as much as I do about that. Like maybe I should just care about, reaching God of Destruction on Tekken. Like, hey, I'm a flame ruler and I have only one character I play, but instead of getting better, I'd rather just talk shit on Twitter to players that have a weird opinion or something. It's like, no, dude, just build a community, maybe make a few friends, maybe try to just get better with your character. Why are you adding all this extra stuff to your plate? Like how is it not full enough already, you know?
And
Crazy,
I know I completely understand because I got a video right now that's on my YouTube page talking about one and doneers, and I had no idea that video was gonna go as big as it did. Well, I ain't gonna say super big, but big for me. Well, I think right now it's at like 11,000 views, like
man. Oh,
500.
congrats.
Appreciate it. Like over almost 600 likes, and like it got to a point where I was getting comments on that thing like almost every few minutes, and like even to this day, I'm still getting comments on that video, and I'm just it got to a point where I'm like, I can't keep answering all these comments. I'm trying to make sure I get to everybody, and some people are basically saying basically I'm gonna say they're being a little bit nasty about it. I don't want to get too into it, but it's a lot of people that say they agree with what I'm saying. But like you said, well, we don't really agree with you. Your take is stupid. I bought the game. I should be able to do whatever I want with the game. And I'm like, y'all really didn't watch the video, did y'all? Because I said if you're in ranked, you shouldn't be one and done. If you want to go to casuals and do it, that's fine. Cause that's casuals. There's nothing on the line. It's annoying, but I really wouldn't get mad about it. But if you come into a competitive mode, you should be ready to just play the set instead of just one and done people.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I do want to say for players, if you're playing any game or you've played a previous title, like let's say the last Street Fighter they played was Street Fighter 4, they should still be allowed to have their opinion heard. They could be absolutely 1,000% wrong, right? But they should still be able to say what they think about, like the state of current Street Fighter or why they hate Street Fighter 6 because they just picked it up last week and what is this new mechanic? Why does this suck so much? At the same time, like I think a lot of people try to make that inch a mile by just using the opportunity given to them to just shit on everyone for no reason, no constructive criticism, no anything, just blatant negativity,
Yeah.
right? Like the difference between if I were to say, oh yeah, TOs have no idea what they're doing, they should just go in a hole and stay there, etc. No, instead I'll say, hey, like, why aren't they doing, newspaper phone calls to local newspaper, and so that there's a way to give feedback that showcases like your intentions. But a lot of people, especially I'd say since I've been at FGC to an extent, a lot of people just want to tell you you're wrong or just tell you you're right, even if they know you're wrong. And like it's very attention grabbing when it's not the time or place,
Mhm.
right? Like, and yeah, it's important for players to realize like, hey, you have a certain amount of goodwill too. Like if you've been playing for 6 months and you have a bad take on something that you post on Twitter, maybe some people will pull you aside and be like, dude, like, what's your problem? But, maybe one or two might say, oh, like, I'm just going to block this person. But, it's because also other players have their own amount of what they're willing to see, what they're not willing to see, what they think, how they think. Um, which again is fine. Like, think what you want. You can post whatever you want on Twitter, and if you're not bashing me or whatever, maybe I'll comment if it's a bad take and I want to tell you that and tell you why. But, I'm not going to just outright block you. I'm not going to tell all my friends or people that I talk to, hey, watch out for that person, etc., for something like that. But a lot of people do. Like it's, I've heard horror stories of someone had a really bad take on social media and certain people went out of their way to either dox them, to find out what they do for work, find out the locals they go to try to get them banned, etc. And it's like, whoa, like if someone has a bad take, that's different than threatening violence. That's like you're talking about two completely different levels. Like, why are you escalating something? Um, and for those people that do that, I have to think that they're either doing it for attention for themselves, or, maybe it's a power thing, or maybe it's, they feel that if they do it, no one's gonna say, hey, like, why did you do that? And so there's, like I said, for FGC, community is number one, but everyone needs to start reestablishing and understanding what community actually means. Um, and you all just gotta stop doing all this extra stuff. Like, please stop, because not only are you harming yourself, but you're harming people that, like, there's people that I know, players that are very high level, that say, hey, you know what? Honestly, because of all this extra stuff happening outside the game but in the community, like, maybe we'll just play Marvel Rivals in 6 months and just leave this all behind. And it's like, whoa, like, you're not even saying that you're leaving because the game mechanics suck. You're not saying, oh, like, I'm leaving because the only reason to stay was to afford to go to this one major a year that I can no longer go to. You're literally saying because of how bad the community is, you just want to leave. That is so bad. And more players are coming forward and saying that privately. Maybe publicly they say different reasons, but when you talk to them or people that are close to them, the story is not, the public one. It's the, hey, like, I don't like how this person got shit on for something that I felt the person said was correct. Like, and wow, like, what if that was me? It's like, dude, like, it's sad that you gotta think that way. Like, oh
Yeah,
man.
it is. I don't know if it's just the newer generation coming in don't care as much about the game and they're more so concerned about virtue signaling how other people see them. And it's kind of like bringing the games down, bringing the whole community down, I would say. And then at times I kind of feel like if a player says something and they're correct, people don't really care. But if the pro player or a more established player says it, the exact same thing, all of a sudden he's lauded as, oh man, this is really deep, insightful stuff. And I'm like,
Oh, dude, I hate that. But that's how, like, when you look a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even in general life, things slowly shift all the time. Whatever it is, sometimes things a week at a time could be completely different, right?
mm-hmm,
So the way I see that is it's the way things have shifted over time, but the big issue with that is the local majority that just wants to enjoy playing the game that they purchased, that they're excited to play. They don't even want to have these conversations, which is fine for the most part until people start becoming convinced that the majority of people actually think this way or that way, which isn't true. It's just, like, let's say 50% of Street Fighter players aren't on Twitter. Like, why are you acting like 100% of the player base is exactly 100% going along with what's said on Twitter? That you don't. But um again, it's just how things have progressed over time. Do I think that a decade ago people could say or do whatever they want? Probably for the most part. I would not disagree that, maybe 10 years ago, if someone wanted to shit talk someone in person, say, you suck, go get better, etc., that, like, no one in the venue would be like, oh, how dare you? They would be like, oh, hey, like, cool it down a little bit, but hey, like, this dude's right. Like, need help with that combo, or like, hey, you need help figuring out this matchup. Like, what could we do to get you there? Yeah, so it's changed. FTC has changed. I talked to a lot of OGs. I talked to a lot of people that have only been in for a few years, and I hear just the craziest stories, the weirdest stories. But the reason things change in a general sense is because enough people want the change to occur and actively try to create the change. And I'm hoping the FGC understands that soon so everyone could get out of FGC what they want to get out of it. Because it seems like a lot of people, especially players, many TOs as well, they're not getting what they truly want out of the FGC. And I don't think that's good, but I think it's at least a starting point in the right direction and forward. If we can all just kind of come together, agree on that, and start the change process.
Mhm. Now, hopefully that can happen, and I'm actually hoping. I think it's gonna happen. 'Cause one thing Gutek said that I did agree with, like 20 years from now, like nobody's gonna be thinking about Saudis and money and stuff like that. It's gonna be they're gonna be gonna come in, they're gonna invest in the community. The community is gonna grow, and like 20 years from now, nobody's gonna be thinking about that. It's just gonna be like everybody's satisfied with the payouts and everything.
Yeah, but again, like 20 years from now, for all we know, there might not even malls will actually be a thing of the past. Maybe big buildings will be too. Like who knows 20 years from now? And but it's even though that's the case, it doesn't mean that we have to fast track it.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that even though it might be inevitable that in person FGC events will eventually not be a thing, it doesn't mean that we have to start that now. There's enough time to ride it out to that point instead of just, hey, like let's just do it now. Let's say, hey, kill off everything in person. Let's make everything online because it's going to be that way anyways and whatever. Because I think majority of players wouldn't want that either. But it's coming across that way and it's coming across very loud that people want the opposite. So start speaking up if you don't want that because the only people that we're hearing that do want these things are the people actually sharing their ideas, sharing how they feel about things, etc.
Mhm. Yeah, because I could definitely see the push to online just because of how good the connections are now, and basically having bad net code for like the last two Street Fighters, and now all of a sudden you're getting this pretty much almost perfect net code, and even the distance now, like from EU to the America, is not that bad. It's like it's functional, so I can see why people will want to push it to online. It's just some games I feel like Mortal Kombat I don't think could work because of the net code. And there's a couple of other fighting games I don't think that can work. Grand Blue being one of them. Uh, but I do think the better the net code gets and the more smoother it is, the more you're going to start seeing a lot of like online tournaments start to pop up and start to take over. And I can see a point in time where the prize pools for those games starts to be like maybe like $100,000. Hey, we're gonna do this for a year. Like you said, take the top 16. You're playing for $100,000. I could see that happening.
Well, it's already happening with smaller prize pools. I think, for example, Too Tough Gaming for Tekken already started an online league for I think a prize pool of 750 or like $1,000. So it's smaller, 1,000 isn't 100,000, but it's starting
Mhm,
already. Like we've seen one-off online tournaments hit a few $1,000s already, right?
mhm.
So um
Uh,
but again, like, does that help the FGC or does it steer people faster in a direction of, hey, like, instead of going to the local, maybe winning $20 or just breaking even, why not try to play an online for a $200 prize pool? Like,
yeah,
most players might actually just say, hey, I'll take a chance on this online tournament.
yeah.
And I don't think that's it's
Good.
tough because I can't blame the players either for choosing alternative, right? So
Yeah. Cause at our local scene, we have like weekly online tournaments for MK. We have weekly tournaments for Grand Blue, and they do pretty good. Like a lot of people enter, a lot of people like them. And I say they're not super big or anything. It's just like you're playing for like just pride and just a little bit of money. But I don't know, our community. I can only speak for my community, my local scene. Like we are a extremely tight knit group. Like we just, like I said, we just had our major end of the year tournament yesterday. I was doing some commentary. I think it went from we were there from 11 that morning until like I think almost midnight, running Grand Blue, uh, Guilty Gear, Tekken, Street Fighter, Smash. We actually had the mayor of the city and the city council come through, and they wanted to see what was going on because there might be some things working behind the scenes where they're trying to basically get them to kind of back the esports scene they're trying to build here. So they're kind of
Oh,
doing
that's
they're
amazing.
kind of yeah, I'm about to say they're kind of doing what you were talking about.
Oh yeah, and I've spoken to um let's see, I've spoken to colleges that want to do FGC stuff. I've spoken to local venues that want to get into it. A lot of them don't want to pursue online, but some of them actually kind of like what you said. I think this one local that's in like a medium or large sized town actually had the town itself adding to the prize pool, giving them a big space for free to like have it, helped solidify pushing it into other towns with like flyers and just local government. So there's definitely ways to pursue for locals to continue expanding, which I think is great. It adds longevity. A lot of these locals don't want to pursue doing online could because their thinking is, hey, like that's a different business route. Like our business is here, not across the globe, which is fine. But you know, there are definitely movements, positive movements, but the only positive movements that you see are again like the locals that are not following suit of what regionals are doing or majors or the evos, right? It's they're pursuing it differently, a different path, and they're seeing that it's working. They're seeing that there's alternatives, and that's what I want. And I think for the health of the FGC, that's what every player should want to out of those that locally are doing what they're doing for said players.
Mhm. Yeah, but I ain't gonna hold you too much longer, DFF. I did want to get your opinion on one more thing though.
Oh,
Did you
absolutely, yeah.
did you get a chance to see the Evo Awards?
Um, I did not see them, but I've heard about them. I've heard um quite a bit. Um, I the thing is, I don't fault Evo for doing something different like the Evo Awards. I think in entertainment, like you have all these different music awards, movie awards, etc. Even in gaming, you have the game awards. In a way, I think the Evo awards were very unnecessary. It was very not well received. A lot, I would say 9 out of 10 people, whether players, TOs, etc., that won't come forward publicly but privately have said things along the lines of it was just them giving themselves a pat on the back.
Yeah.
And I do think that Evo has every right as an organization, as a brand, to do whatever they want as Evo. If they want to start an Evo Burgers and Fries restaurant, I'm not going to say don't do it because that's not my right to. I just won't be a customer.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's I don't think things like that um really the scene, the community takes kindly to it. I think it's a little unnecessary, and I think it goes to show a level of um like what Evo how Evo sees the FGC community by doing things like that, right?
Yeah.
It showcases how they feel about you as the player. It showcases how they feel about TOs that aren't in their system or haven't been put up for the awards. It showcases their line of thinking, and my hope is, whether for good or for bad, that the average player can see what the EVO Awards, what it actually meant versus what it seemed. And that's really important. And look, I respect the team behind Evo. I respect everyone that was part of the awards show. I respect everyone, right? But like some things, like, you should know better. And from what I've heard, from what I've been told, and when I say from what I heard and what I've been told, I speak to everyone. A lot of people don't like that about me, but that's the one thing you could say about me, is that I speak to basically everyone on all sides. I don't care. And from all sides, everyone felt that it was just unnecessary and they shouldn't have done it. And I refuse to watch it due to that as well, which I'm sure those who missed it, who heard about it, probably felt the same.
Yeah, how about to say, because I did watch it. Well, until it got too late, because I think it was on not East Coast, but West Coast time. So I think it was like midnight, and they was still going, and I was just like, I gotta go to bed. It's getting late.
Oh wow, one of those, huh?
Yeah, and I would probably agree with that. It was a lot of basically the same people getting nominated for basically the same awards over and over and over again. Because I thought when they said the Evo Awards, I thought they maybe it was supposed to be a community voted award. I thought, well, maybe they're taking like commentators from around the country, putting them up and then letting people, whittle them down to like maybe like five of them are the best out of the nation, and then letting people vote on those instead of just no, it's you have to be like an Evo commentator. Like it's pretty much if you haven't done anything with Evo, then you're not going to be nominated. And I thought it was going to be more like a community award type thing, but it did kind of feel like basically just 3 or 4 hours of just people friends giving awards to their friends, and I didn't
Yeah,
I
that's
didn't like the way it looked.
oh man. Yeah, like, it's just so unnecessary, but it goes to show, if that's the decision they made to do that, that should be very loud and clear on how they see the community, because they didn't have to do it that way, but they chose to. It was a choice.
Yeah, like that's about the only thing I can say about it. And I know it was City of Wolves because it's coming out pretty much. SNK is pretty much trying to get that game everywhere. They've already paid for a spot at Evo for this year. and I'm like, the game is only going to be out for what 3 4 months. And I'm like, it's already got an Evo spot. It's kind of one of those things where it feels like now the companies are kind of like, hey, we'll pay you money to get our games at Evo now instead of just being a community voted game.
Yeah, times have changed, and personally, I think it's for the worst. It might end up being for the better if in some reality, right?
Mm,
But personally, especially with the extensive amount of experience that I've had in different sectors of the entertainment space, it's setting off so many alarms, so many red flags where like I can say that all day, all night long to everyone, but it doesn't mean, just me pointing things out will create the change or the shift that needs to happen for me to say, oh, on paper, there's not 100 red flags or bad stuff. It's a community thing, and that's I think the FGC its greatest strength is the community, and as I've also said, its greatest weakness is its community as well.
It sounds like a double-edged sword.
Absolutely. Yep.
Right, DFF, let everybody know where they can find you at.
Yeah, you can find me mainly on Twitter these days, at Real Ken Willis, or if you're on Twitch, I try to be in as many player streams that are known as possible, just kind of supporting and chit chatting. Or on Discord is DFF123. And, doors always open if anyone ever has any questions. I'm a very open book. I know a lot of people prefer to reach out privately and just know that's perfectly okay with me. I won't tell if you don't tell. And yeah, to the FGC, I'll continue trying to support and make changes and point things out. But I hope everyone could eventually come together and create the change that I think the FGC has needed and has wanted for a while now.
Mhm. 'Cause right now, I'm still debating whether or not I want to go back to streaming. I'm kind of just up in the air about it. I think
Oh
I
yeah,
I think I did a
I think
stream
you should.
on I think I did a stream on TikTok just to try it out to see how that whole thing works. Which
I think
I'm not
you should, man. You
uh,
should.
it just sometimes I just don't know what game to play. Sometimes I just like I don't want to play a fighting game. I just want to kind of just chill and play something.
Okay, yeah. It depends. I think you should try, and if you don't like it, you could just not do it again. But I think it's important to try and experiment new things because it's one of those you never know until you actually try it yourself.
Yeah, I'm about to say because I know when I was doing I would dual streaming to YouTube, Kick, Twitch, just multi streaming, just trying to keep up with everything. But I definitely appreciate you coming through. We definitely going to have a part two to this one because I actually want to get into basically laying out basically if a player wants to get sponsored, what they need to do, and what do orgs need to change to basically be more stable in the future.
Oh yeah, I'd love to be part of that. I would love to also have the opportunity to maybe ask other orgs if they want to speak on it as well. If you're open to that,
Oh no,
I think.
I'm open for it.
Oh yeah, so I think that things like that is very positive for the community, and I'm 100% You have my go ahead if you want to do this again with that. I'll be there.
Okay, I definitely appreciate. 'Cause we did have one of TTG's players on, I think earlier. Uh, T Lee Tekken from TTG. I think
Oh,
she,
very cool.
yeah, we've had her on before, and she's definitely a lovely guest. She's probably like the best guest because she was just so happy and just so cheerful and stuff. It's just infectious.
Oh yeah, I love that, dude. When a positivity just radiates off a person, oh dude, it's nothing's better.
Yeah, so I've been trying to keep track of her stuff and just make sure that I support her as much as I can. Make sure she gets seen and stuff. But I think TCG's been taking good care of her.
Oh yeah, I think there's a lot of orgs like TTG that are doing very good things for their players and absolutely 1000% they deserve kudos for taking care of the players because it's a commitment and a lot of these orgs now are absolutely over delivering at times too to bring their players more opportunities and I love seeing that.
Yeah. Well, that's gonna we're gonna call it right there, guys. We will talk to y'all guys later. Y'all be safe. We're out.